All right, here we go. Week 4, college football. Are you betting these games? If you are betting these games, get comfortable. Tune in, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. We're about to dive into week 4 big time games. This is not the Jackass episode. This is good stuff. College football is here. Ben Rasa and Matt Gajewski betting you at Odd Shopper. We're going to break down all the matchups from the ranked versus ranked, some of the other blue blood programs. We're getting into conference play. We'll look back at what happened in week 3. We will also do our best bets. Don't worry. End of the show. We will do some cool segments here. I want to welcome you in. Enjoy it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You and me were just commiserating. You know what we need to do today? We're going to get back on track. Week 3 was not kind to us.
No, it was my worst week in my entire life, which might seem hyperbolic, but that is exactly what happened. I'm not kidding.
That'll do it. Yeah, that's not good. Talk to me, because I did not have a good week either. I had some momentum going. The real dagger 2 weeks in a row for me has been the Pittsburgh game. I really needed West Virginia. I thought they should have won the game, and they did not. And that spun Vanderbilt melting. The only good thing I did, I picked up Kent State, no joke, live at plus 72.5, and that worked. But man, what is going on with these teams?
Yeah, the only thing I did well was pick up Alabama live against Wisconsin. And Van Dyke, when Van Dyke got hurt.
Yeah, I saw that.
In these games, I don't think West Virginia should have won. They were in position to win late in the game, but they were murdered in yards per play by Pitt. And their secondary is a huge problem. They're like 127th in coverage again. Neil Brown came out in his press conference. He was talking about benching players in his secondary. The 2 Northwestern players that transferred in have been the 2 worst players in that secondary. Wouldn't be surprised to see new faces there coming soon. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't think there were a lot of things that should have flipped and went my way. There were a couple covers that were close, like Tulane missed an extra point. That was a loss by the hook. But I mean, you're betting on teams that have bad kickers. What do you expect? Like, that's going to happen to you. Mississippi State got beat down against Toledo. They are really, really injured. So mistake betting on a team like that. Yeah, man, I don't really know. There's not too much for me to get into. Picked a lot of bad teams and need to do more evaluating and do better.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do. We're getting to it. Last thing, probably the most important thing. It turns out the UMass is actually not good.
They're on the ban list. I'm never betting them again.
They are 21-point favorite this week. That'll be a Thursday discussion. We're getting into it. Here we go. Yeah, they're playing Little Sisters of the Poor, obviously. So here we go. Let's get into the games. We're starting with the Friday game because it's on Friday, and it's a good one. Nebraska and Illinois. These teams are both doing what they need to do. How good are they? I guess we're going to find out a really crucial data point here. Nebraska is pushing a double-digit favorite. They're at home. I do think that they are certainly the rightful favorite, and I think the spread's pretty accurate. What do you say? How good is Illinois?
I think the spread is accurate too. Illinois is a team I've been trying to fade this year. They came up with the win against Kansas where they had a sub 50% post-game win expectancy. That's now 2 games in a row. Kansas has like 60+% post-game win expectancies and finds a way to lose. More on them later, I'm sure. But so Illinois has 1 marquee win against a team they should not have beaten, and then they've played 2 really bad teams. They played an FCS team 145-0, and then they played Central Michigan, who moved on to their 3rd-string quarterback during the game because their backup, Joe Labas, cannot stop throwing interceptions. So I don't really know what to make of this team. We didn't have high expectations coming in. I don't think anything efficiency-wise is still like looking in your favor if you're an Illinois backer. But on the other side, Nebraska also hasn't really played anyone competent. Their toughest game has by far been against Colorado. And Colorado just has a couple fatal flaws where a team like Nebraska that actually recruits well and plays well can just exploit that and take advantage of you. And it's not like they beat the doors off Colorado. It was 5.1 yards per play to 4.2 yards per play. Colorado had a couple really costly plays in that game that cost them a ton. The pick 6 from Shedeur Sanders, which is wild because he has 2 interceptions and 1 turnover-worthy play. I know he went in the media and was talking about how the interception wasn't his fault. He was right. Whether he should say that or not, it was correct. But Colorado also had a blocked field goal, a missed field goal, a turnover on down that gave Nebraska basically an easy score. So I don't know if that game should have been as wide as we're suggesting. Injury-wise, there are some concerns for me as well. There's now 2 offensive linemen gone for Nebraska. We lost Prohaska to begin the year, but Micah Mezcua is not playing right now. He's away from the team. Coach wouldn't say why. Javin Wright hasn't played at linebacker, so that's an issue. Illinois is basically healthy. They're only really missing a couple tight ends, which their backups have been penalized incessantly. I guess that could be a problem. But yeah, man, I don't really have a strong opinion on this game whatsoever. I don't think we have a lot of information on both because of the opponents they've played. And the one marquee win Illinois has should have been a loss. So it's hard to evaluate. I'm certainly not laying points with Nebraska, but I don't think I want to back Illinois either unless this gets to like a 10.
Yeah, it's a wait and see for me as well. I want to see kind of where the spread goes. If it crosses 10, it'll render Nebraska completely useless to me. And then I'll be deciding if I want to back Illinois. If it hangs around here, there could be a situation. I'm pretty high on Nebraska in life here, but again, it's a game worth noting. These teams have taken a good step, and one of them is going to be in really nice position as the season deepens. But
they're both slow, I'll say that. Illinois 121st in pace, Nebraska 115th. I don't know. The reason I don't want to bet an under, though, is the concerns with both teams are in the trenches. Offensive line and defensive line for both teams are an issue. So if like one of these teams allows more pressure than we expect and it leads to short fields and stuff, I'm concerned with the total just because of that.
A lot of big games, though. We're going to get there. Don't worry, everybody. USC and Michigan. What do we got here? We got Michigan saying, okay, we need to make some changes. Are those changes going to help them? I have no idea, but it's going to make for an interesting discussion here. USC is a road favorite. We've seen them take down LSU. What do you say? Michigan looked horrible against Texas, but Texas might be that good.
They also looked horrible against Arkansas State, who I don't think is on the level of Texas. So I don't know. Michigan's a really hard evaluation right now because they're playing pretty good football at every position except quarterback. You could probably throw in receiver into that. There's some injuries that I think are going to be impactful in this game at wide receiver and tight end for Michigan. But can they exploit anything USC is going to do on defense? I'm not sure. And right now, efficiency metrics have USC 91st in total defense, 86th in coverage. I think there's a little bit of noise in there, especially against LSU. I mean, you saw like Achille Arnold give up a mind-blowing touchdown where he was in position to get an interception and somehow he lost the ball in the air, and then Kyron Lacy comes down with his score. So that's a play that is just wildly influential to box score metrics, to efficiency metrics. They're getting back Mason Cobb on defense. Jalen Smith has been limited. He should be a little bit better. But defensive game plan, what do you really have to do to stop Michigan? This team cannot throw the ball. They're turning to Orji under center. Davis Warren was absolutely atrocious, and Orji couldn't beat him out. Every time Orji comes into the game for these gadget run plays, it's just almost straight up the middle. They're not even running outside the tackle box with him. So, I mean, if you're the USC defense and you're trying to come up with a game plan, what do you really have to do to stop this team? Plus, Colston Loveland, their best tight end and pass catcher, he got hurt in the Arkansas State game. He's hopeful to play this week. Tyler Morris, one of their receivers who plays a lot. I don't even know who their number one receiver is. Their pass game is so bad. He missed week 3. They're still rotating centers. The offensive line has been very bad for Michigan. It was a huge concern. They lost everybody from last year. They're 31st in pressure rate allowed. They're allowing a 31% pressure rate allowed. The only question I have here is their defense is certainly good in keeping them in games. We saw LSU, they're coming in around 90th in total defense right now. That's with Blake Baker. So, I mean, the improvements have not been there for that team. The concerns with USC were the offensive line coming into the year. And I still have concerns here. They're 101st in pass blocking, 64th in run blocking. So Michigan should be able to get after the quarterback better than LSU for sure. Does that affect Miller Moss? Do we see some of these efficiency metrics drop? Because he can't run. You're going to have to rely solely on your pass catchers who are very good to get you over this. But at the end of the day, man, like I just don't think you can bet Michigan because they're live to score 0 points in any game.
What about an under 46.5?
Both teams are playing really fast, actually. Well, Michigan's not playing fast, but USC is playing fast. I considered an under, but honestly, I already played USC. I got a bad number on it, which, I mean, just overall efficiency metrics, USC is 46, Michigan's 26, so it makes sense. Value is on the Michigan side, especially playing at home. I just can't back a team without a quarterback. So I wish I hadn't bet it. I shouldn't have gotten ahead of myself. That's what's cost me, even though, like last week. This is another crazy thing about last week. It was the best week of my life for closing line value and ended up with the worst outcome. So I don't know. Maybe this will be the opposite of that.
I mean, not to belabor the point, but you did your job. Like I've been, and again, it's a perfect time I'll mention. If you're talking about closing line value and you want to hear these bets when they're dropping in Matt's Discord, in my Discord, I'm talking about a lot of things early, but particularly Matt's. Those links are below for tails. If you haven't been over there, it really is an outstanding platform. I say it every time, just come to this page and search who fits what you want to do. We have so much great content here. If it's me, that's amazing. If it's Matt, that's amazing. If it's someone else, awesome. Hop in their community, be part of it. Because you're dropping bets early. You're getting closing line value. I saw those games, Arkansas, so many of them got a ton of closing line value, and then you were straight punished. I know how that feels, but yeah, no doubt about it with USC. I might look at 2 and under here. We'll see. I don't trust Michigan whatsoever, and obviously the ground attack is going to be on full display with Orji under center. This is going to be, so talk about infuriating. I watched Oklahoma State from start to finish last week against Tulsa because I had the over, and Tulsa marched up and down the field, and they could not score. They just couldn't score. Now, Utah and Oklahoma State is going to be a much more competitive matchup, and that's why the spread is just a couple points to the Ute side. We've been saying this for 2 years. Every time we talk about Utah, I ask you about Cam Rising's health, and that's where we're going to start again. The hell's going on under center for Utah, and who do you like in this game?
Yeah, we missed this, unfortunately, which I'm not sure why Whittingham gave up this information. He notoriously doesn't give up injury information. But then he gave it up on Monday night, and I was live on the NFL stream, so I missed the chance to back Utah. Because, the whole thesis of the bet was Cam Rising's likely to play, but for some reason, books aren't accounting for it. But anyway, Whittingham gave up the news. The line moved 4 points immediately. But one thing that didn't move was the total in the game. It was at 52. I've seen it jump a little bit to like 52 and a half. With Rising under center, you would expect the efficiency to rise for Utah. This team was absolutely beating down Baylor. That was probably on pace to be like a 55-0 game till Rising went hurt. When they put in the freshman, not only was his performance lackluster, but they neutered the entire offense. So Baylor got a lucky cover to my benefit. Now Rising's back. You don't have any worries with offensive game plan. Oklahoma State's defense has been downright atrocious to start the year.
It's terrible.
Yeah, they have a bad defense. I mean, they were giving up huge chunk plays to Arkansas, and they're not any better. They lost Colin Oliver, one of their edge rushers. He's been in a boot. Justin Wright is in the same category, according to the coaching staff. They're currently 108th in total defense, 117th in coverage, which is really important now that Rising's back because you can't just stack the box. Whether you want to do that or not, you're 97th in run defense. So Micah Bernard should have opportunities in the game, Rising when he does decide to run. However, I'm still okay with an over because I have concerns with Utah's defense. They still have 2 starters out of their secondary. One of their linebackers has been out the whole year, Levani Damuni, but they also didn't have Karen Reed. So now you're potentially missing 4 starters in your back 7. And they're, again, like last year, people love to talk about them in the trenches. It's been underwhelming again. And then on run defense, they're 76th overall. You look what this team has allowed to opposing backs. Against an FCS team, they allowed 13 yards per carry to the Southern Utah running back. Dawson Pendergrass from Baylor was at 7.7 yards per carry. Bryson Barnes, Rashul Faison. Faison was at 6.1 yards per carry, the Utah State back. Some of these it's later in games, but still your run defense is not holding up. And we've seen this with Oklahoma State this year. A lot of opposing teams have tried to stop Ollie Gordon. Alan Bowman's actually made them pay. And I kind of have to take some L's on this, but I don't even know if it's Bowman. His bottom line efficiency metrics aren't great. He's just throwing to Presley, Owens, Stribling. He's amazing pass catchers. So it is a pick your poison situation for the Utah defense, and you're doing so potentially without 4 starters. So I'll take an over here. Oklahoma State is very fast. They're 10th in seconds per play, overall pace. Utah's 129th, but I actually looked at the splits with and without Rising. They're never going to be a top 10 offense in terms of seconds per play, but they were much faster in the top 100 before Rising went out. So I don't think you're looking at like an Air Force pace on the other side now that Rising is back. I'll take an over at anything close to 52.
It's going to be interesting. I don't mind that number either. It'll be Utah pass for me for a side, but I might tell you on this over because Oklahoma State's defense, I tried it last week, and like I said, I was thrilled with the game. Just didn't get the touchdowns that I needed. All right. So speaking of fast, Tennessee and Oklahoma. Tennessee, 65 points in the first half. I don't care who you're playing. Now, Kent State, I think, is decisively the worst team in the country, but that's just almost impossible to do. I don't think I've ever seen a team score 65 in the first half. Now, they obviously get a much stiffer test, but I'm not really sold on Oklahoma. Are you sold on them? Or do you think that Tennessee kind of just goes into Norman and takes care of business?
I just don't know who they're going to have on the field. They're bringing back Nick Anderson from injury. He warmed up last week, one of their starting wide receivers, which they need someone out there. I mean, they're starting a bunch of scrubs, and that's because Jaleel Farouk is out for the year. Angel Anthony, he played a little bit in week 1. He missed the last 2 games. He's out there suited up, but he's coming off a season-ending injury last week. Just don't know where he is in his rehab, but I don't think he plays more than a handful of snaps if he plays. The O-line is decimated. They already lost Hatchett. He's out for the year. Spencer Brown missed the last 2 weeks. He missed week 2, and then he only made it through 5 snaps in week 3 before he had to exit again. He's one of their tackles. Their center, Branson Hickman, got injured immediately in week 1. They just lost a backup last week, Jake Taylor. This O-line is putrid, and a lot of it isn't their fault. They were replacing almost everybody heading into the year. They papered over it in the transfer portal, and now you have a lot of those guys injured. And this team has not been recruiting the offensive line quite as well in recent years. So you do have some depth problems, and that's apparent in the efficiency metrics. This team is 128th in run blocking. They're 66th in pass blocking. Some of that elevated by Jackson Arnold's ability to run. But it's not just that. Brennan Thompson exited the wide receiver room last game with an injury. So, I mean, you have Nick Anderson coming in. You potentially have Thompson coming out. They lost 2 starters in their secondary, Kendall Doby, who plays that cheetah position, and Gentry Williams, one of their starting corners. They both went down. DeJoun Terry, he got hurt in the game, a defensive tackle. He might be back. I think there's a better chance we see him. But we're dealing with just tons and tons of injuries. And the only real injury we have for Tennessee is Jordan Thomas. He got hurt in the preseason. He was their slot. All the other guys that have been out, like Cam Seldon at running back, hasn't played in 2 games. Heupel came right out and said, due to their schedule, they just weren't playing these guys. And it makes sense to me. You played Kent State last week. No reason to get these guys on the field. As far as what we've seen from these 2 teams, Houston has played down to competition. Oklahoma's played down to competition. They had the Houston game, a 16-12 win. Underlying metrics were not good. They were outgained 5.0 yards per play to 4.1. Houston should have won that game. Against Tulane, they end up winning 34-19, but yards per play was very close. It was 4.7 to 4.2. These are teams you should be decisively beating. NC State was a big win for Tennessee. That was with McCall still healthy. So, yeah, they have the 2 cupcake wins over Chattanooga and Kent State, but they beat down NC State. That's enough for me. Yards per play for Tennessee is not fraudulent. They're killing everyone that they're supposed to so far, and they're healthy. So I'll take them against a really hurt Oklahoma team. A 7 is fine with me, even on the road.
Yep, I'm with you. Vols have looked good. I don't know what Oklahoma can really do, and I haven't been super impressed. You mentioned Arnold's fine, but he's not working with a lot of tools back there. They're, never bad to be in your place, but it's not the easiest situation. Vols, and there is a 6.5 floating out there. You do have to lay some extra juice. Keep an eye on it. Anything around that is good. Wow. Now, I honestly don't know what the total is in the next game, but I'm about to look. And it's got to be low, I'll tell you that much, because it's Minnesota and Iowa. Yeah, 35. Honestly, that seems higher than I thought it would be. 35.5-point total between these teams. That's because Iowa's finally found some offense lately, but they also let Troy score like 20 points. Minnesota, they don't allow any points, apparently. Nevada could not do a thing. 2.5-point spread, Big Ten clash, any angle here.
I'm somewhat interested in an under at 36.
See? Doesn't that seem? Yeah, I'm with you. I see it.
We're not going to see good pace in this game. Both these teams are outside the top 100 in pace. I don't really have a lot of concerns with either defense. The biggest concern I have is Iowa has like one weak link at corner. They've been like rotating Nwankpa and TJ Hall because these are the two guys that keep getting burned on those long plays you see Iowa giving up every single week. But it's literally just these two guys. Everyone else is basically a complete stud. So I don't know what's going on. Nestor hasn't really gotten a chance, but that's the only concern you really have with Iowa. They're still 6th in total defense. It's just you give up like 2 plays a game from Nwankpa and TJ Hall that have been catastrophic because their offense still can't score. Cade McNamara has been bad. There's just no way around it. So I'm not really interested in any sort of like spread or total. The offensive line, I will say, has been pretty good for Iowa. They've taken a big step, and they were pretty hurt last year. So that's important to see. But Minnesota's been pretty good in run defense. They're 31st. They put a bottle on Amari and Hampton, just 4.3 yards per carry. They didn't allow much rushing production to Rhode Island or Nevada. I'm not sure if that's a positive or just is what it is kind of situation. But then, I mean, Max Brosmer, I'm not really interested in him as a signal caller either. We saw him with good performances the last 2 games, kind of. He was terrible against North Carolina. So, I mean, he's an FCS transfer. He's now facing an Iowa defense. I think this O-line is a little worse than what we've seen from Iowa, but I expect slow, run-heavy game plan from both sides, just with the inability of either quarterback to throw. Pace is really bad. Yeah, man, I don't know. There's 2 injuries on Minnesota in the secondary, but I don't even think Iowa can exploit this. They just don't have anyone good on offense other than their running back.
Yeah, I mean,
it's Minnesota too, honestly. They don't have anyone good with their running back.
That's the thing. It's like you mentioned a weak link. Minnesota's going to exploit that? How is that going to happen? I really don't see that happening. This is just like, you could throw Northwestern. They could add a 3rd team into the game and just play, I don't even know, a different version. And if it was Northwestern, the total still should be this. None of these teams can do anything. Barring turnovers or like weird fluky plays, this feels like a 17-10 type game.
Yeah, this to come under needs to be like 19-17. And that was basically the score against Iowa State, who is by far the better offense of probably any team these 2 opponents have faced, and including themselves.
No doubt about it. Oh, man, this is the game of disappointment. Just pure pain coming up right now in this game. 2 teams that West Virginia's killed me all year. I think KU has hurt you a little bit. They play. It's inside 3. I don't even know where to begin. Jalen Daniels has really, really, at times, I think, underperformed. West Virginia's secondary is atrocious. Is there an angle in this game between 2 teams that I was pretty high on coming into the season?
I bet UNLV last week, which got a lucky. Maybe it's not lucky because they were getting a lot of points, but
lucky Kansas to win, but not cover, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, that was definitely live. Yards per play was relatively close. Kansas certainly had a post-game win expectancy above 50%, so they should have won the game. But yeah, I don't know. UNLV got a lot of points in the game, so that maybe they still would have covered, even if it did play to what we saw in like yards per play and box scores. But you mentioned it with Kansas. Their biggest weakness has been their quarterback. If this persists, they need to consider making a change. He's completing 55% of his passes for 6.2 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 2 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays, still running the ball just fine. But the biggest problem I have with this is his O-line is keeping him clean. 16% pressure rate for the Kansas offensive line. That's awesome. It's one of the best marks in the entire country. So Daniels is going out there and he's doing this stuff unilaterally, just straight up costing them games. And we know their pass catchers are good. They were efficient with Jason Bean last year. And Luke Grimm is healthy. This should be a better unit, honestly, with another year of experience and better health. The run game is awesome. And maybe this is a point we should talk about. Changing OCs, they've just straight up abandoned the run at times. And Devin Neal is having an awesome season, and this O-line is very good up front. So I don't know. They're very tricky to evaluate because of that. It's literally just a unilateral one player is directly costing you games. Now, West Virginia hasn't been that different. Garrett Green has been a negative for them this year, which is crazy to say. In all of 2023, he had 8 turnover-worthy plays. He already has 7 this year. So I don't know what's changed with this unit. Their O-line is definitely a little worse. They lost like Nestor and some really good players, and now they're allowing a 33% pressure rate. Perhaps it is just the pressure getting to Garrett Green more. But yeah, it's been 2 atrocious quarterbacks to start the year. Injury-wise, both teams are pretty healthy. You just have Daniel Highshaw out for Kansas and Edward Vesterinian, the defensive tackle. Not sure if we see him. It's a Kansas or pass, just like looking at efficiency metrics so far. Kansas is 15th in overall team efficiency. West Virginia 72nd. You mentioned the secondary. Like West Virginia has a fatal flaw. 127th in coverage. I expect them to bench at least one of these Northwestern transfers, maybe both. Their coach has already talked about that. And their pass rush doesn't get home. They're 101st there. Their only redeeming quality, I guess, is their run defense, but other teams aren't even testing that at this point because they don't need to. Kansas has been good on defense. Their major concern is up front as well, but it's not a fatal flaw. They just lost some defensive tackles last year to graduation into the NFL. I'm sure they're bouncing around some squads, but I think Kansas is the more complete team, but it's just really hard to back either of them when your quarterback is so bad. So I don't have any play in this game right now. It's a Kansas or pass. But I'm not sure I will play it, to be honest with you, unless this goes like beyond 3 or something.
It's going to be interesting. I have no play in it either. I would be if I was on the game. I'll be on the other side. I would stick to West Virginia to the bitter end. I might bet the over. It's 57.5. I do think there could be some big plays on both sides of the ball. Not a huge tempo spot, but I don't mind it.
79th in tempo for Kansas, 70th for West Virginia. Yeah. You're basically right on average.
Yeah. I can live with that. I'll rely on just efficiency, explosive plays to get me there if I go that route. But 2 teams that have underwhelmed. There's really no debating that. Someone has to win. I have it on good authority that one of them will in fact win, but tricky. A team that how did this game slip in here? I don't even know how we're talking about this. Arizona State, these bozos. Talk about a game that killed me. Texas State fumbling the game away to them, no problem, for Arizona State versus Texas Tech, who scored legitimately 50 points in the second quarter to kill North Texas last week. You've got an interesting team here in this Arizona State squad. They've done what they needed to do. I still am not completely sold on them. Texas Tech, you spent like 10 minutes in the last show rattling off their injury list. So I want to ask you, of all those guys, who ended up playing? Who's still hurt, and where is this Red Raider squad as they head into an important game here?
They're definitely still hurt, but North Texas honestly had more concerns, just like their secondary. And honestly, we probably did not spend enough time on this. They suspended 3 players in their secondary before the season for arrests, and they've lost 3 other players that were considered starters or contributors. And that's not even how they won the game. Like North Texas got gashed on the ground. But I think I just overrated that team, honestly. Like, just mistake.
I was with you, too. I bet them. I bet them at 10. And it got over 10, and I was like, oh, this was the number. And it could have been 30, and it wouldn't have mattered. So
the injuries are the hesitation I have with Texas Tech right now. So I guess to go back and recap it, still quite a bit of injuries on defense. Spencer, Adedire, Esters, Wilcox, they're all out. Harvey Dyson, one of their offensive or outside linebackers, is questionable. They sustained more injuries on offense. Sterling Porcher, one of their tackles, is questionable. Vinny Scurry's out. Backup running back Valdez is out. It's not quite as bad as we thought, and there still are some players listed questionable like Baskerville, but he played through the injury. So I'm tentatively expecting those players to see the field, but just know that's not all the questionable guys. Arizona State is getting some reinforcements. So while I want to fade them, they're getting back their best edge rusher, Prince Dorba. They're getting back a player we projected to start on the offensive line, Sean Knott, to begin the year, and a depth linebacker in Crook. They still have some other players out. LaTerrence Welch is in a walking boot in the defensive backfield. They're a little weaker up front, like Zach Swanson and Kungaika. The defensive tackles have been out. And Kamari Wilson, their safety, only played in the opener, so they're far from 100%. And I really do want to short them at some point. I don't think their victories are impressive. They beat Wyoming and Svoboda, who's horrific. They beat Mississippi State, who just got beat by Toledo. And the yards per play in that game was 5.8 Arizona State to 5.5 for Mississippi State. Extremely close. And Mississippi State did some stupid things to give that game away. They had a fumble 6, and they also had a turnover on downs at the Arizona State 31. And then Arizona State was outgained by Texas State yards per play, 5.3 to 4.8. Texas State just did what they always do. They turned the ball over in key positions to give Arizona points, and it cost them the game. So I don't know if this is the spot to short them or not. I'm just very concerned still with the Texas Tech injury situation. Their O-line is bad. Now you're getting back, like the best edge rusher on the other side. It's just very concerning, and I don't know if I can do it.
Any feel on a 59.5?
It's probably an over or pass. I
feel over or pass too.
Arizona State plays slow. Texas Tech plays fast, 96th in pace to 8th in pace. Both defenses are somewhat concerning, just overall defensive efficiency. Texas Tech is still 132nd. They're 133rd in coverage. Now, I'm not sure that Arizona State can throw the ball. Sam Leavitt has been bad when he's gotten chances. He hasn't gotten a lot of them, which is probably smart. But he is a sub 60% completion, 8 yards per attempt, but 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 big-time throw, no turnover-worthy plays. They're not asking him to do a lot. The O-line has a 37.5% pressure rate. So the O-line has not been great. Maybe getting back now will help. And the other thing is I'm not sure Texas Tech can take advantage of it anyway. But that's a concern. I don't know, man. This might be a full stay away for me.
One of the better games, just in terms of, entertainment and just action, TCU and UCF on Saturday night. Wild one out there. Now they hit the road to take on SMU, who I don't think we've seen since they disgraced themselves against BYU. Just an all-time stupid game where they kicked 5 field goals and just blew an ACC that's wide open besides Miami, but that's neither here nor there. They still have some things to play for, but this is a game you would need. They are a home dog. Is that rightful? Is TCU that good? What do we make of this, matchup in Texas?
Yeah, another one that's really hard. Current overall efficiency ratings, SMU's 19th, TCU's 30th, which might surprise a lot of people. But you said something right away in the beginning. SMU got into very good field position many times against BYU, kicked a lot of field goals. Some of the points they've given up have been on really stupid, unforced errors. Like they've had punts get snapped over their punter's head, which that gave Nevada an immediate touchdown. A lot of their games have been closer than they should have been, and it's just really dumb, unforced errors. There are a lot of concerns with this team still, despite those. I mean, those are errors themselves, but they're benching Preston Stone for Kevin Jennings. Both of them have been fine. Stone has definitely been better in terms of efficiency, but for whatever reason, they like what they're getting better out of Jennings for this moving forward this time. I don't know. I think he's okay, but I'd rather have Stone. The TCU defense has been pretty good. They're 47th overall, and they're balanced. Their worst unit is their pass rush. It's only 57th. So I'm not sure it's going to get better. This is the best opponent that SMU has faced by far this year. But then on the other side, just like the TCU meltdown was pretty wild to see. And maybe this should have been expected a little bit because in the first half, they converted just an absurd amount of 3rd and longs. UCF would get them behind the sticks early, get them into like a 3rd and 11, and then you would just see Josh Hoover and these elite receivers pull the magic out of their hats. So that was pretty surprising to see, but it was a rifle loss. UCF 6.8 yards per play, TCU 6.6. I'm just not sure if SMU can stop Hoover, who's like a 300-yard factory. He has 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. He doesn't need to do a lot either because his receivers are so good, like Betch and McAllister. And they haven't even had Wright play yet. He's been out the whole season. He was projected to be a starter for this team. So I'm just not sure I fully buy the efficiency metrics. SMU's had the softer schedule, definitely. But I also don't think I can back them as the team with the better efficiency. The pace is very good in this game. It's 18th for TCU, 7th for SMU. An angle you want to look at is the over, but it's another one I'm probably going to pass on until we see it move maybe later in the week.
57.5 and another over pass. And this is I can hear the cringe. I know, friends. If SMU gets to 3.5, I'm gonna bet them. I am going to bet SMU if it gets to 3.5.
This team has awesome efficiency metrics. I don't blame you.
I know everybody is like, how can you do this? Like they've killed us. I know. At 3.5, I really do believe I kind of just have to trust the they are playing better than they're getting. And some of it is user error by them, but their metrics grade out a lot better than you would think. So I got to do it at 3.5.
Yeah, I have the same hesitation as you, man.
Yeah, because it's pain. It's a lot of, again, this is why you got to get in our Discords, because it's just, if nothing else, it's such a fun time in there with everyone pulling together on these teams, dropping great info. Links are below, man. Come on in. Do yourself a favor, align yourself to the Tails community at Odd Shopper. Couple other things before we got a handful of games left. 2 big announcements. Maybe it's not 2 big ones, but 1 big announcement. No, it's 2. 2, we're doing our Thursday show. I'm not even going to pretend that we're not. Let us know what games you want to see. There's a lot of egregious games that are on my list this week, so we're definitely doing that show. And I know you want to tune in, A, to see the show, and B, we're doing a giveaway on that show. It's going to be around our podcast feed. We've got some exciting stuff. We're just ironing it out. We got big things here going on at Betting You. So check out that video for more on that. I'm going to be announcing it. We're going to do something fun. Get you guys some ways to get more access to me and Matt. Maybe we'll make some shirts too. We've been talking about Betting You merch. What do you guys think about that? That was his idea, not mine, but still a cool idea. We're going to do a lot of fun things here though, but stay tuned for that announcement. I don't like to call for people's jobs, because if that was the case, everyone that's saying that I should be fired, it never feels good. And if you check my Ben's Best Bet of the Day video, I got some loon bats all the time. But it does feel like if Florida gets crushed here, this could be as dire as it gets for a coach. I don't think they're going to get crushed, but do you think this is like the season's over, but do you think this is a must win for Napier?
Yeah, people were calling for his head on Monday, and there was some actual smoke that he might get fired, but he did not.
If he loses outright here, I think that might be it.
For sure. I agree with you. And it should be, because this Mississippi State roster is a disaster.
Bad.
And they're really hurt, which was the big miss, I think, last week. Just assuming the Mississippi State backups, as highly recruited as they are, can beat a MAC team. Apparently, that is not the case. But so right now we have a lot of injuries, a lot of them coming in the secondary. Corey Ellington, their safety, has not been on the depth chart. Diego Brumfield, he's been out at safety. Trey Wright at corner, he's been out. Calvin Dinkins, he missed their last game at defensive tackle. Chris Keys, corner, got hurt in the game. Kedrix Bingley Jones, defensive tackle, got hurt in the game. They took his helmet away on the sidelines. Kelly Jones at safety, he missed week 3. 2 of these guys might be back, according to the press conference. That's Trey Wright and Brumfield. You're missing a ton of guys on defense. Now you're going against Florida, who I think has left a lot on the field on offense, and they should be a positive regression candidate. For reference, like, the underlying efficiency metrics for DJ Lagway are they're almost laughable, man. He has 3 interceptions and he doesn't have a single turnover-worthy play. So this also comes down to like wide receivers, like catch the ball, don't volleyball set them in the air to defenders. But I don't think I've ever seen this. Sometimes you see players that are like close with their big time or their interceptions to turnover-worthy plays. Generally, you'll have about like double the turnover-worthy plays as interceptions, because they don't all get caught or all the fumbles recovered. But for Lagway to have 0, but then have 3 turnovers is crazy. The O-line is actually doing pretty good. Like, their center, Jake Slaughter, hasn't allowed a single pressure all season long. Not that Mississippi State is going to generate any. But all this to say, they've played 2 tough games already. People are like ready to full sell this team. I'm not quite there yet. I like what Florida's roster has. There's a couple injuries I will be watching, the big one being Eugene Wilson. I am optimistic, though, because he warmed up for their last game. He took an injection to try to play through it, just couldn't eventually get it to go. And the only other real injury concern I have is Jakeem Jackson at corners out. You're facing Blake Shapen in a crop of pretty bad receivers for Mississippi State, so I'm not sure that really matters. I don't know, man. I just think this is a very big gap in talent, and Florida should be able to come away with this win, especially like if Lagway plays more. Been really impressed with him. Graham Mertz, as much as he was a success last year, he has 0 big-time throws and 5 turnover-worthy plays this year. Lagway has 0. So just give me the freshman. He's given more juice to this offense. And I think the defense is quietly a little underrated. They're 44th overall. Mississippi State is 67th. And then Mississippi State has just infinite injuries back there right now, whereas Florida has 1.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. We'll never know. I thought if Wegman played last week, Florida would have won. They just Texas A&M turned to a mystery freshman. Who the hell was that? Not to derail the show. That kid looked he looked quite good.
He was the number 4 dual threat quarterback in the class.
Yeah, he was running. He was really good, no doubt about it. So I think it's pretty safe to say he's a bigger challenge for Florida's defense than whatever Shapen gives them this week.
Okay, Blake Shapen, man. So he has 5 turnover-worthy plays already, only 1 interception, the complete opposite of what we've seen from Lagway. Their O-line is allowing a 30% pressure rate. They're not really keeping their quarterbacks upright. So even when they're on offense, this has nothing to do with their defensive injuries. This is probably going to be a problem against Florida, who actually has, decent defensive metrics. They're 19th in run defense. They're 60th in coverage. I'm not really that worried about Florida's defense either right now. They've played Cam Ward, and Marcel Reed is a lot of promise. And plus, it was a really weird game plan that A&M ran. A&M was out there with 3 tight ends, on a ton of plays. There were basically 12 personnel on every single play. I truthfully don't think that this Mississippi State team has enough tight ends to do something like that. So I don't think they could even mimic the game plan Texas A&M came out there with. Not to mention they're certainly not as good at those positions anyway. But anyway, yeah, don't think they're really alive in this game. I like Florida, even if it's 5.5.
Yeah, there's a 5 out there, so you can save a half. Rutgers and Virginia Tech. The Hokies, obviously, a lot of their season right from the start got derailed because of Vanderbilt, who then turned out to actually be Vanderbilt. Don't really understand that, but that's just a story for another time. This is a 3-point spread, 3.5 mostly, actually 3.5 at -110 now. What do you make of Rutgers? I've seen them a little. I saw them play Howard, and I think they played Akron. They beat up on some bad teams. How good is Rutgers?
I think they have a very good defense and a very good offensive line, but they're always limited because they went out and they decided that Ethan Kaliak-Manis was going to be their quarterback.
And they also did great.
Yeah. He has a 62% completion percentage, 8 yards per attempt. They played Akron and Howard. What do you really expect? Their O-line looks awesome. Their run game should be very good with Monangai, and that's how they're going to have to win games, which is possible. The real only concern I have is, when they get down in games early, can Kaliak-Manis crawl you back? But fortunately, in this matchup, I don't think they'll need to. Their O-line is first in pass blocking and run blocking. You might say that's a product of opponent, but they basically brought back everyone from the O-line that was very good last year. So I kind of think it's sticky. Virginia Tech is 91st in run defense, and it's not like they've played a slew of tough teams either. They lost to Vanderbilt, who just subsequently lost to Georgia State. They beat Marshall, and the yards per play was really close in this game. This should not have been a 31-14 game. Virginia Tech, 4.7 yards per play. Marshall, 4.5. Marshall had an interception that led to a touchdown. Marshall had a turnover on down at the Virginia Tech 5. That was a 4th and 2. Marshall had a turnover on down at the Virginia Tech 14. That was a 4th and 5. Either of those get converted to any sort of points. I mean, we're talking about a single-digit game here. Marshall gets down to the red zone twice and comes away with 0 points. They also missed a field goal. So, this could have been, at worst, 17 points in Marshall's direction, and then boom, you have a tie ball game. So that's a huge disappointment. Old Dominion, 6.0 yards per play for Virginia Tech, 5.5 for Old Dominion. Old Dominion was at 6.2 yards per carry. That's a team that has one of the worst offensive lines in the entire country. So I don't know, man. There's real concerns with Virginia Tech. It seems that all those guys they brought back have experienced zero growth, and perhaps they've even regressed. Injury-wise, Virginia Tech does have a couple concerns. Xavier Chaplin on their offensive line got injured in the game. Dalton Stroman, one of their starting safeties, was seen in a sling. And one of their depth linebackers, Will Johnson, had to get carted off. So that's not great. On the Rutgers side, you have two linebackers dealing with injuries, but they might actually be back. Muhammad Torre had an offseason injury. They won't comment on him. And Tyrene Powell tore his Achilles at the beginning of winter workouts, so he's getting close to a return. We'll see. It's a Rutgers or pass. We've seen Virginia Tech play bad. We've seen Rutgers play well. There's a question behind it, but at least it's been good. They haven't played down to competition like VT has. I don't think I'll bet it just because I'm not sure I can actually put real American dollars on Ethan Kaliak-Manis. But, maybe you look to an under in this game. That is also another approach. Rutgers 106th and pays Virginia Tech 67th. But yeah, man, no real lean. I guess it's Rutgers or pass.
What do we got going on here? Rutgers. I can't even find this stupid game. Probably because it's New Jersey. Yeah, I mean, in Blacksburg, which I'm not betting Rutgers. That's not going to happen. But at 3.5, I'm not betting Virginia Tech either. This should be. I watched the Old Dominion game. It wasn't particularly good. Virginia Tech ultimately pulled away, but you mentioned Old Dominion is not a good. I've seen Old Dominion now twice because I saw them against East Carolina as well, and East Carolina might be secretly good. That's another story for another time, but that'll be a Thursday discussion point. Yeah, this is a weird game. Talk to me in Discord about it as we get closer to kickoff. Two more. Baylor and Colorado. I'm very excited to talk about this game. Baylor, that was a team that I actually am a little pissed off. I had that on my list, and Saturday got a little swirly, and I didn't. Air Force is a perpetual short. Air Force has no idea what's going on right now, and I'm a big Air Force guy. Colorado, that game was a mess too. Colorado State, I don't know what happened to them. They're awful. Horrible performance. Clash here in Boulder. Pseudo pick'em. Bears or Buffs?
I'm in on the Buffs in this game. I would bet this at -1.5. 2, I think, is still okay.
Yep.
And I'm just basically selling Baylor as far as I can right now. Their one close game against Utah came when Rising was injured. They were getting absolutely demolished before that occurred. And then we already talked about it. Wilson couldn't get much going. They also didn't ask him to do a lot. They kind of just went full vanilla, tried to get out of there as quickly as possible and escape with a win. And then you mentioned it. Air Force is a bottom 10 team in the country right now.
Awful.
Other than that, Tarleton State, nothing impressive on the Baylor resume. Colorado, I think, has looked relatively good. And you basically just, can someone exploit their fatal flaws? If yes, fade Colorado. If not, they're fine to play, and I don't think Baylor can exploit this. When you look at how this Baylor team is comprised, first of all, on defense, they're 89th in pass coverage. Shedeur is by far the best player on the field in this game. That's a huge issue. And they're 51st in pass rush, so I'm not sure they can even exploit Colorado's offensive line weaknesses. Colorado 91st in run blocking, 92nd in pass blocking. So that's kind of like a neutral situation to me. Where Colorado really got exposed was against Nebraska, who has an excellent defense. So to sum that up, I'm not sure Baylor can do it. Also, you have the Baylor quarterback injured, DeQuan Finn, questionable in this game. We'll see if he plays. And Colorado's quietly made a lot of defensive improvements. This is not the sieve we saw in the first year under Dion. They're 41st in total defense right now. They're actually second in the country in tackling efficiency, which that's a testament to just coaching. Their biggest issue is their pass rush. I don't think that's a huge concern here because Baylor's offensive line is 114th in pass blocking and 80th in run blocking. So they're just letting opponents right through. As far as Colorado, I mean, They should have scored more points in the Nebraska game. They clearly should have lost. It was 5.1 yards per play to 4.2. But Colorado had a field goal blocked. They missed another field goal. They had a pick six. That should have made the game a little bit closer because that was a play that wasn't even attributed as a turnover-worthy play to Shedeur. I just don't know how this team, Baylor, on the other side is going to match up with Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn and Wester. If you don't have dudes back there, like that's a huge problem, and Shedeur is just going to pick you apart. So I like the -1. I think it's completely fine in the situation. I've quietly been impressed with the Colorado defense. Like allowing 6.2 yards per attempt to Raiola is pretty good. The reason they lost that game as much as they did was self-inflicted wounds, nothing that Nebraska really went out and did themselves. So I'll take Colorado.
I'm with you. Baylor, you mentioned it. Not impressed with what they've done at all. The Air Force is atrocious. And Colorado, they better get them now because look at the schedule. It's about to heat up. They go to UCF in the bounce house, Arizona, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. There's not a lot of wins coming, in my opinion. So they should be 3-1, and then they're going to be about 3-9, but that's neither here nor there. We got one more game. I do want to mention very quickly, though. We talked about a lot of games. Don't worry. Best bets are coming up rapidly. Bet365, bet 5, get 200. That's what I'm talking about. Even if you have a bad week, this is the type of stuff that can save the bankroll because you're saying, man, I was down, but I just have $200 in bonus bets just for betting $5 at Bet365. The link is below. Take a couple seconds, see if it's in your state. Simple as that. If it is, take advantage. You got to be 21 plus 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, but it's never bad. A little extra money to splash around during busy season. Last game on this episode is Purdue and Oregon State. We both correctly, I think, realized that Oregon State is not actually good. Oregon slowly and methodically took them apart. That was because San Diego State is not good. Notre Dame, we talked about this a little. There was really two different ways they could have responded. It could have melted or they could have been angry. They looked quite angry. Now, maybe Purdue sucks because we don't even know because they only played an FCS team and then they had a bye. What is going on with Hudson Card and Purdue? Because they got blasted by Notre Dame last week.
They did get blasted. I like Purdue here. I took a 5.5. The biggest thing is the injuries for Oregon State are adding up, and it's not getting any better. They're down 3 starting offensive linemen right now. Tyler Volton, Jacob Strand, and Van Wells are all out. They're still down their presumed number 1 wide receiver, Michigan transfer, 4-star recruit Darius Clemens has not appeared in the game yet. On defense, Olu Omotosho on the edge hasn't played yet. Tyge Hill, he didn't play in their last game at defensive tackle. And a player who's for sure not going to be out there is Noble Thomas, defensive back who was seen on crutches. This team is decimated by injury. Now, Purdue has some as well. CJ Smith at wide receiver hasn't played. Nyland Green hasn't played. Those are 2 of the Georgia transfers, but they're still far healthier right now. And I'm going to bet on the transfers they have coming from elite programs like CJ Madden from Georgia, Kendrick Breedlove. Some point they'll get back Nyland Green, but they had 4 starters back on the offensive line. They added 4 transfers to come in and help them. This unit has been pretty good. They're 17th in run blocking right now. Oregon State is 117th in run defense. That's against some pretty pitiful competition until their last game against Oregon. But still, Oregon did what they were supposed to do, and then you didn't stand up against Idaho State or San Diego State. Those are massive concerns for me. And, I mean, go to the FCS game. Like, this team allowed 9.8 and 12 yards per carry to the top 2 backs against Idaho State. This Oregon State defense is atrocious, and now they're down arguably their best corner and 3 starting offensive linemen. I still think Hudson Card is reasonable. They added Reggie Love to a backfield with Maccabee. They had 2 Georgia transfers come in at receiver, so it's not just CJ Smith who's been out, but Denylon Morissette came in. Jamal Edrin's back from the ACL. Max Clare's there at tight end. This team should be better. And lucky for them, they're facing just a far inferior team than what they just faced last week. So I'll take points with Purdue. Biggest concern for me, honestly, is just traveling across the country.
Yeah, it is a funky destination, no doubt. But, the Notre Dame game, it is what it is what it is. Could be a good rebound. There's a 5.5 out there too. I'm on FanDuel -115 again. You can go to the live odds screen on Odd Shopper anytime. It's there. It's available. Very easy to shop. All right, friends. You've made it this far. You've been waiting for me to say it. You got a little money in your pocket. You're walking down the street. Someone stops you. They say, hey, you look like a college football guy. I need a couple bets for this week. What do you tell them? Where do you start with your card?
My 3 favorites are over in Utah, Oklahoma State at 52, Colorado at -1.5, and then the Purdue +5.5 that we just talked about. Those would be my top 3.
All right. We've got the over in the Utah game. We've got Colorado laying the points, and we've got find this 5.5 for Purdue. Mine's going to be one's going to be an if statement. If SMU gets to 3.5, that is where I'm going to look. And I'm going to ride with the Vols. I think that Tennessee is just that good. You mentioned the injuries to Oklahoma. I just really believe in Tennessee and what Heupel's doing. Obviously, level of competition, they've just been beating up on garbage. But NC State is not garbage, and they slaughtered them. Nico looks awesome. Tempo will be there. I don't think Oklahoma can stand up to them. I think Tennessee's got a kind of advantage across the board. I'm going to ride with the Vols. I'll lay 7 if I have to. Try to find 6.5. But there we have it, friends. Again, Thursday episode coming at you fast. Teams like UMass, maybe Louisiana Monroe. FIU might be back. Akron is getting 27.5. Where's Kent State? Kent State's playing.
They play Penn State, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's 50, which is a lot, to be honest. But they gave up 65.5. So there's a lot going on there. You've got other teams like Rice and Army. That's going to be on the list, no doubt about it. Really interesting games. We are here for it at Betting You. You want these type of breakdowns, this is the place to be. Friends, appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, give Matt a follow at Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazBets over here. Let's keep it rolling. Let's turn the tides. Week 4, lock in. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck. Enjoy. See you then.